Hi, Polly here.
And this is Tortuga.
And this is Trek for Free Stories. Let's dive in.
The pirates are documented. The treasure is documented. The Texas Historical Commission is searching the seafloor for it right now, and a descendant of Lafitte's most trusted lieutenant just surfaced after seeing a Trek for Free article. You are not too late. The water is accessible. The boats are waiting, and the hunt has never actually stopped. If you're ready for an adventure, we're going on a treasure hunt through time.
What they've actually found at Matagorda Bay? The Pass Cavallo shipwreck. An early 19th century vessel at the historic entrance to Matagorda Bay, the same pass where Aury's fleet anchored in 1817. British pattern muskets recovered. Artifacts dated 1810 to 1850. The wreck appears to be a Texas Revolution gunrunner, and its cannons were salvaged and used in the defense of the Alamo in 1836. The Texas Historical Commission is separately planning surveys for Aury's abandoned fleet. Pass Cavallo has layers, and not all of them have been found. The investigation is active and ongoing.
Aury is the prequel that makes all of it make sense. He's the chapter that explains how Lafitte knew where to set up. The same coastline, the same Spanish shipping lanes, the same shallow draft passes. Lafitte didn't discover Galveston, he took it from Aury. This timeline pulls together nearly 300 years of one continuous story. It begins in the 1540s, when Spain was discovering and mining enormous deposits of silver in the mountains of New Spain. From there, we follow the route that carried that bullion along El Camino Real to Veracruz, where it was loaded aboard Spanish treasure fleets bound for Europe. We start with the 1554 shipwrecks off the Texas coast, where 3 Spanish galleons were lost in a hurricane, and only 2 survivors lived to tell the story. From there, we move into the age of the Gulf privateers, men like Louis Michel Aury and Jean Lafitte, who targeted those same treasure ships while building their own ports along the Texas coast. Then the story shifts inland, where Jim Bowie, and later even President Mirabeau Lamar, spent years searching for the Spanish mines that produced the silver in the first place. The timeline connects those Spanish mines, the Silver Highway through what is now New Mexico, the shipwrecks off Texas, the pirates of the Gulf, and finally the archaeological investigations happening today. Because this story isn't finished. The Texas Historical Commission is actively conducting marine archaeological research in Matagorda Bay near Rockport. The hunt is still happening, right now.
Before Campeche. Everyone knows Jean Lafitte. French pirate, smuggler, hero of the Battle of New Orleans, ran a pirate colony on Galveston Island called Campeche from 1817 to 1821, vanished without a confirmed death record. The buried gold on the Texas Gulf Coast, Mustang Island, the Lamar Peninsula, the shallow passes between the barrier islands, all points back to Lafitte. What almost nobody knows is that Lafitte wasn't the first one there. When Jean Lafitte arrived at Galveston Island in 1817, someone had already built the port, set up the cannon batteries, established the supply lines, mapped the shallow draft passes that make this coastline navigable if you know what you're doing. His name was Louis Michel Aury. He was French, like Lafitte. He was a privateer, like Lafitte. And he had been raiding Spanish silver in these waters for a year before Lafitte showed up. Lafitte pushed him out. Aury left in a hurry, and the historical record has never fully accounted for what he left behind.
The man who ran the Gulf first. Louis Michel Aury was born in Paris around 1788. By his mid-20s, he had worked through the French Navy, commanded his own vessels in the Caribbean, and built a reputation in the murky maritime world of Revolutionary-era Latin America, where the line between privateer and pirate depended entirely on who was watching and which government had signed your paperwork. He was fighting for the right side, or at least the winning one. Spain was losing its grip on the Americas. Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, revolutionary movements were erupting across the continent. Aury aligned with them. He carried letters of marque from the Republic of Mexico, which made his attacks on Spanish ships technically legal acts of war rather than piracy. The Spanish did not appreciate the distinction. By 1816, Aury arrived at Galveston Island with something remarkable for a man operating in a political gray zone, a legitimate operation. He built a port, log structures, housing for his men, a fort with cannon batteries facing the harbor. And then, this detail says everything about what he was building: a printing press. This was not a man planning to raid and run. He was building a colony. In September 1816, José Manuel de Herrera, an envoy from the Republic of Mexico, formally appointed Aury resident commissioner of Galveston Island. He had a flag. He had a government behind him. He had 13 ships raiding Spanish cargo on the Gulf. He had everything except luck.
The money. What made Spanish shipping worth raiding in the first place? El Camino Real, the Royal Road, the Silver Highway. Every ounce of ore mined from the mountains of northern New Spain came south on this road toward Mexico City. The mule trains loaded with silver bullion traveled this corridor for 200 years, up from Chihuahua, through the Rio Grande Valley, past the ranges near Victoria Peak, through what is now New Mexico. Hundreds of mines fed into it. The ore consolidated at Mexico City into bars and coins, then moved to Veracruz and loaded into the holds of Atlantic-bound galleons pointed east toward Spain. The Gulf of Mexico was the exit ramp of the entire system. The 3 Spanish galleons that sank off Padre Island in 1554 were on exactly that run, loaded with Camino Real silver, lost in a Gulf storm before they cleared the coast.
Artifacts from the 1554 fleet are on display at the Corpus Christi Museum of Science and History. Real silver, real ships. That is what 2 centuries of mountain mines and mule trains looked like when it finally reached the water. Jim Bowie understood this world. He had run an operation with Jean Lafitte out of Galveston, smuggling enslaved people through the Texas coast before moving to Texas himself. Once there, Bowie became a treasure hunter, chasing the same Spanish mines Spain had spent 2 centuries digging. The San Saba, Los Almagres, every rumored deposit in the hill country. He fought 160 warriors to protect his access to one of them. He died at the Alamo in 1836, still looking. The mine location died with him. Bowie and Aury never met, but they were hunting the same thing from opposite ends. Aury was taking the silver off the ships. Bowie was hunting the mountain where it came from. That is what Aury's fleet was intercepting in 1817. The same route, the same ore, the same Atlantic crossing, and Aury was waiting at the mouth of it. Here is what the historical record documents about his take. Of the prize ships that came through Galveston during his tenure, one carried a cargo of spice and indigo worth approximately $778,000. That is one ship, one documented cargo. In 1817 dollars, roughly $18 million today. He had 13 ships. He was raiding continuously. The Gulf between Veracruz and the Florida Straits was a Spanish shipping highway, and Aury had men and vessels positioned to intercept it. Where did the accumulated prize money go? That is the question the historical record doesn't answer cleanly. The mutiny. Before Aury ever reached Matagorda Bay, he took a hit he couldn't recover from. On September 7th, 1816, a portion of his crew, Haitian sailors who were central to his Gulf operations, mutinied. They didn't just leave, they sailed to Haiti with considerable booty and left Aury wounded. Whatever Aury had accumulated to that point, prize money, coin, cargo, a significant portion of it sailed away on ships he never saw again. He had been robbed from the inside. He was not yet at his strongest. He had already lost before Matagorda Bay. Matagorda Bay, 1817. In 1817, while Aury was away from Galveston on operations, Jean Lafitte arrived. By the time Aury returned, Lafitte had made his move. The politics had shifted. Aury's commission was undermined. Aury left Galveston. But he didn't go far. He moved south and established a new base at Matagorda Bay, at the historic bay entrance called Pass Cavallo.
He built a camp there in May and June of 1817. Log houses for more than 200 soldiers, 13 ships at anchor. Pass Cavallo is not remote history. It is a stretch of Texas Gulf Coast water that fishing boats run today. It sits northeast of Rockport, between Matagorda Island and the mainland. If you have been out on Matagorda Bay, you have been in Aury's water. He had 200 men, 13 ships, and the same Spanish shipping lanes he had been working from Galveston. Whatever prize cargo he had salvaged and rebuilt after the mutiny was now ashore in those log houses at Pass Cavallo. Then the camp was attacked. Most of his ships were abandoned or burned. Aury fled with the last 2 vessels, 2 ships out of 13, and sailed east toward Florida. 11 ships stayed. The log houses stayed. Whatever was in them stayed. Nobody has produced an accounting of what Aury left at Pass Cavallo in the summer of 1817.
The man who replaced him. When Aury fled Pass Cavallo with his last 2 ships, Lafitte was consolidating Campeche on Galveston Island, the same port Aury had built. Lafitte's operation ran the same coastline, the same shallow passes, the same barrier island geography that Aury had mapped. Did Lafitte know what Aury had left at Matagorda Bay? Almost certainly. The privateer world of the Gulf Coast in 1817 was a community of a few hundred serious operators who knew each other's ships, captains, and cargo. Lafitte's intelligence on the Gulf was unmatched. If there was prize cargo abandoned at Pass Cavallo, Lafitte knew about it. Whether he retrieved it or whether Aury's cargo is still down there alongside his ships is one of the questions the Texas Historical Commission survey is answering right now. The descendant who just surfaced. In July 2026, a woman left a comment on the Aransas County History Center's Facebook page after they shared the Trek for Free article about the Lamar Peninsula. She wrote, "I am related to Nez Coop Chigizola, Lafitte's trusted lieutenant. I did not realize they left treasure in Lamar. Maybe time for a family vacation." Nez Coop, cut nose in French, was one of Jean Lafitte's most famous and trusted lieutenants. He was inside Lafitte's inner circle during the Campeche years. The Chigizola name appears in the documented historical record of Lafitte's operation. And a living descendant of that man just said she didn't know there was treasure connected to this coastline. That is either because the family story didn't include the Lamar connection, or because she is the first in her family to see it written down, find her ancestor's name in the story, and make the connection herself. Either way, a person with direct family roots in Lafitte's most trusted circle read a Trek for Free article and said, maybe time for a family vacation. This is not a cold case. This is a thread still unraveling in real time. Nez Coop's descendant is out there. Lafitte's operation touched this coastline, and the people who carry the family stories of that world, stories that never made it into any history book, are still alive and reachable. The Aransas County History Center is already on it. We'll tell you what surfaces. What the Texas Historical Commission found. This is not legend. This is documented archaeology and an active, ongoing investigation. Pass Cavallo doesn't have one lost fleet. It has layers. What's already been found and confirmed. Site 41CL92, the Pass Cavallo shipwreck, is an early 19th century vessel at the historic entrance to Matagorda Bay. Artifacts include British pattern muskets, India and Shortland pattern. Dating puts it between 1810 and 1850. The leading identification? The San Felipe, a Texas Revolution gunrunner that sank at Pass Cavallo in November 1835 while evading a Mexican warship. Her cannons were salvaged from the bay and sent to San Antonio, where they helped defend the Alamo in 1836. What the Texas Historical Commission is hunting now, that is the Texas Revolution wreck. Aury's fleet is a different story entirely. 1817, 13 ships, the privateer who was there before Lafitte. The Texas Historical Commission Marine Archaeology Program has been planning dedicated archaeological surveys of Aury's 1817 Matagorda Bay camp and the ships he left behind. The historical record shows nearly 150 vessels have been lost in Matagorda Bay and its entrance at Pass Cavallo.
Aury's ships are somewhere in that count. They haven't found them yet. This is what an active treasure hunt looks like from the outside.
You bring the history. They get you there. The Texas Historical Commission survey covers the underwater archaeology. The boat captains cover the water. And the coastline between Rockport and Pass Cavallo is the same Gulf Shore Aury worked that Lafitte inherited and that a descendant of Lafitte's most trusted lieutenant is now thinking about visiting. This is not the Caribbean. You don't need a passport or a dive team or a decade of academic credentials. You need a boat captain who knows the water. And you need to go.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Trek for Free Adventure Stories. If this sounds like your kind of expedition, give us a thumbs up, subscribe so you can catch the next one. In the spirit of adventurers of yesteryear and the storytelling legends of Louis L'Amour, I hope we find a place in your travels. See you on the road. Until next time, adios.